Welcome to Milcert Minutes. I'm Nick. Today will be the first part in a multi-part series regarding where I'll be discussing the M16 and AR-15 pattern rifles in U.S. military service. The scope of this series is not to include any specialty carbines like the XM16-E1 or anything else you see along the way. This series will be covering the M4 carbine once I complete it and once I have it ready. But we'll start here with the XM16-E1. The XM16-E1 was the first, made up the bulk of what was the first contract of M16s. This was an order of about 85,000 that went to both the Army and the Marine Corps. The rifles first started arriving at units in early, March of 1964. And the units that were equipped with these, specifically in the Army, included that initially took these to Vietnam were the United States Army Special Forces, the 101st Airborne Division, the 82nd Airborne Division, and as famously depicted in the film We Were Soldiers, the 1st Cavalry Division. This was the rifle that they took with them into battle at the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley in November 1965. And when these rifles entered service, it was a real game changer. Up until this point, most countries, pretty much every country, was using some type of battle rifle. They were made of steel, they had wood stocks, they normally fired a 30 caliber diameter cartridge. This thing you have large aluminum components, fiberglass furniture, and what was effectively an extremely high velocity 22 caliber round. And this was just a really different thing compared to the M14 or the M1 Garand, which had still been in production just a few years earlier. With this rifle, we also introduced and carried over some old equipment for accessory to these rifles. Initially with the XM16-E1, you had these slings, which these are basically the late 1950s sling that was made for the M1 Garand, and that also was issued with the M14. They were quite noisy. They were made of canvas, so they didn't hold up very well into the jungle. And in later videos, we'll get into other slings that were better in adverse jungle-like environments. Additionally, we began production of the M7 bayonet for the M16 rifle. We made several different bayonets for the M16s, and they're all universally compatible, so even the newest made ones will work with this. This bayonet is based off of an earlier bayonet that we made for the M1 carbine called the M4, and I'll show that to you here. As you can see, these lock in the same way and have a similar position at the muzzle ring, and they work the same way, it's just they're sized differently and they are not interchangeable between the M4 and the M7 bayonet. Now we're going to take a closer look at the rifle with an overview look, and we're going to go butt to muzzle. We're going to start by showing you the Type D buttstock. This is one of the major components that changed in the M16A1. Some of these actually ended up being issued on early M16A1s, but by the end of their run were fully phased out. The difference I will show you here in a picture. As you can see, the M16A1 has a trapdoor on the butt plate to allow you to have a cleaning kit compartment in here. The Type D on the XM16E1 is entirely solid. It's like a foam-filled stock with a rubber butt plate. They also have this sling swivel that floats freely that's roll pinned in place. They did away with that and had something that was just fixed in place for the A1. Moving over, we have our XM16E1 lower receiver. This is one of the really big changes, was the boss or the fence that they added around the magazine release button. It was found that soldiers could sometimes run into brush or hit a tree or something like that and would accidentally drop their magazine. So they did away with that and just had a piece of aluminum right there just raised around it to help protect the magazine release button. They also did away with the early style of receiver extension. Originally these did not have wrench flats to be tightened in with. These would just be tightened in and pinned in place. This one is not pinned in place, it just has a pin there. This was done on this reproduction receiver made by Nodak Spud, but the pin serves no purpose, it's purely cosmetic. Another thing that changed between the E1 and the A1 is the E1 originally shipped with what was called the Edgewater Spring Guide or Edgewater Buffer. There were problems seen with these in the case of having bolt carriers bounce back and sometimes have an outer battery detonation, which is extremely dangerous. And those were replaced immediately with the issuance of the A1. Another thing to note here is this is not a proper XM16-E1 upper receiver. This one's got a CH, which stands for Colt Harvey aluminum, meaning this receiver was made probably sometime in the early 1970s. An original one would not be marked like this. They only started making these after the M16-A1 got fully adopted, and then Harrington and Richardson and Hydromatic, the General Motors division, started making them. Another thing to notice that they did away with before the E1 was even complete was the chrome bolt carrier group. The reason why they did away with it was because Colt was not doing the best job at chrome plating these, and you'd start on occasion seeing bolt carrier groups where the chrome plating was done so poorly that rust will start to form beneath the surface. So they did away with that. Moving further down, we'll take a look at the barrel here. Now this one is marked CMP chrome bore. That means that this is a Colt manufactured chrome lined M16A1 barrel made sometime in the mid to late 70s, or starting in the mid to late 70s and possibly on until the 80s. These originally would have been marked, a proper XM16-E1 barrel would be marked right here, and it would say either MVP12 or VP12. Later M16A1 starting in 1965 and 1966 were marked MP. Later on you started to see in the later 60s this would be marked CMPC for chrome chamber. That was done in 1969 to 1971. Later on you had CMPB, which was 71 to 73. And then finally Colt began marking them CMP chrome bore in 1974, and they did this until the end of the run. Another thing that existed in the XM16-E1 and early into the M16A1 lifespan was the three-prong flash hider. They did away with this because it was found in the jungles. You could have guys getting these snagged on vines or tall grasses in the jungles of Vietnam. But that's a basic overview of the XM16-E1 rifle. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and follow the links in the description below to follow me on alternative social media. And thanks for watching.